On November 5th, 2008, only one day after the 2008 presidential election, South Park aired the episode About Last Night, the story of which hinged on the actual results of the election, opening with President Obama's victory speech less than 24 hours after it had actually taken place. At the time, this felt like an insane magic trick. How could they have been that quick to make an entire animated episode about the results of the election and air it just one day later? Well, the answer may surprise you, and given Matt and Trey's recent comments about avoiding the upcoming election, I figured there's no better time than talk about the South Park election episode that changed everything. So let's talk about last night. Hey, this video is brought to you by two things today. One is my official compilation channel, Johnny Too Cozy, where I'm re-editing tons of my old videos into themed compilations, long videos that are great for sleeping or drawing. And second, my wonderful patrons who get tons of extra content exclusive to Patreon. We're currently in the middle of season 2 of our BoJack Horseman audio commentaries. Check those out if they interest you. Thank you so much for your support. I couldn't do it without viewers like you. So, as was nearly everybody when it happened, I was absolutely shocked by the mere existence of About Last Night, which, by the way, has one of the most perfect titles in South Park history, with the end of the episode having everyone sort of embarrassed by what happened the night before, but also literally saying to the audience who watched the episode one day after the election, hey, About Last Night. I actually thought I knew how they did this for years. I, like many others, assumed that the episode had basically been made in two different versions, one where Obama wins and one where McCain wins, with the character roles reversing depending on who actually won. In fact, I've seen people echo this sentiment online as recently as the last few weeks, given the renewed discussions about South Park and election coverage. But as it turns out, while they had initially planned to do multiple versions, they actually just fully bet on Obama winning the election.
And it's like, there's just no way. And so we didn't spend any time doing a McCain version. We wouldn't have had time.
Here's what Matt Stone had to say in an IGN interview. We were going to produce a couple of different shows, but we don't do the show that far in advance. So as it got closer in the last few weeks, it was so obvious that Obama was going to win that we just produced the Obama show. We just did it and assumed the polls would be right. So while a lot of people still believe that they had simply been very well prepared for either outcome, the reality is that they did not really have a decent solution for if they had been wrong. In fact, I'd say their solution, while funny, would have probably been the sloppiest episode execution in series history. Yes, even worse than what happened with the 2016 election.
Pull it out
If
somehow.
McCain had won, we were going to just show the show, but we were going to do commentary over it.
Here's Stone elaborating on this further with IGN. Trey and I were going to get really drunk and play the show and do our own Mystery Science Theater 3000 over the top of it, where we would badly dub in lines. You would have watched the scene where everyone was happy about Obama being president, but we would have badly and purposefully badly dubbed over the top, oh my god, he didn't win, we're going to riot. So yeah, as you can see, they really didn't have any meaningful solution to the possibility that McCain won the election. They were pretty confident they were going to see an Obama victory, and so they wrote that story. And I think what makes About Last Night endure is that rather than playing on any specific politics, it's more so playing on the heightened emotions that come with the election cycle. Pointedly, they're showcasing the absolute elation and excessive optimism of the Obama supporters in the wake of his victory.
Yes, I can! Yes, I can! Here comes the change, everybody!
And also the shattering depression and pessimism of the McCain supporters in the wake of his loss.
With an inexperienced man and president, we do know it. He's right. Game over, man. Okay? We'll probably be dead by sunrise.
In fact, they didn't even put a ton of thought into the political beliefs of the characters in this episode, despite the fact that they're all specifically choosing a side of the political spectrum. Most of the choices made were from the perspectives of either story, circumstance, or comedy. In that IGN interview, Stone said that they thought Drunk Randy was funny, so they put him on Team Obama. They knew Ike had to get hurt, so the Broflovskis had to be out celebrating. They thought Garrison being a McCain supporter was funny because he's a self-hating gay man, which is even funnier given the places his character would end up going in future election cycles. But even funnier is that while all of this celebration and panic is happening, the main story, starring Barack Obama and John McCain, is just fully an Ocean's 11 parody. Those politicians that everyone is so worked up about, so stressed about whether or not the right person is running the country, both of them were grifters who only went through the process of running for president so that they could steal the Hope Diamond.
Boom, baby!
This is honestly such a funny premise. It certainly makes the episode age well. The idea that any presidential candidate is only running so they can pull off an elaborate heist would be funny at almost any period of time in any election cycle.
Bravo, Obama and McCain. 10 years you two have been working on this plan, and you finally pulled it off.
In order to prep for this storyline, Trey watched all of the Ocean's movies to get down the formatting, which he had never seen before. It's an obvious inspiration, but it works really well here.
I'd seen Ocean's 11, which is fun. It's like
Ocean's 11 was fine.
Yeah.
The other two are ridiculously bad.
And Trey did a great job parodying the heist format. Obviously, you can't really do a heist movie without a big "so here's the plan" montage, laying out why access to the Oval Office was so important for that plan.
The tunnel is only accessible from the Oval Office and just happens to travel right underneath the Smithsonian Natural History Museum.
I also love the way they slowly reveal more of the players who are involved with the heist and exactly what their roles are. South Park is typically adverse to making the easy or hacky jokes that everyone else makes. At the time, Sarah Palin was understandably a punching bag for easy jabs about her intelligence. Rather than just play on the same tired old bits, South Park played with expectations, at first making her seem like the Palin we all knew before this reveal.
Hello?
Hello, Sarah. It's McCain.
I hope to God you're calling to tell me you're in position below the vault with the L7 charges.
In an election cycle where she was easily the most dunked on candidate, it's so funny to portray her as this badass British super spy, easily the coolest of the heist team.
God, she's awesome.
They did a great job with playing with those expectations in these moments. On the Obama side of things, they make it seem like Michelle was about to figure out his plan and call him out for it.
Barack, what is it?
The laser system guarding the diamond was replaced by an optical relay 3 days ago.
This part of the story also plays into the whole heist trope where some kind of major wrench is thrown in the plan at the last second and they have to adjust their plan on the fly. In this instance, it's the security system. I also love how they included another immediate real-world event joke into this new heist plan.
512, my grandmother who faked her death on Monday calls in a bomb threat to the museum.
I said I put a bomb in your building.
Obama's grandmother actually did die on Monday of that week, just 2 days before her grandson was elected president. A pretty funny and dark 3-second gag to throw in there. I think this episode works well just because it is a solidly executed premise. Presidential candidates only running so they can steal the Hope Diamond is simply very funny. On the commentary side, I think they did a nice job, especially in 2008, playing on the extremist attitudes people tend to have about presidential elections, with McCain supporters literally believing that the world was going to end that night because of Obama's victory, while the Obama supporters are expecting some kind of immediate magical change in the world that makes everything better. This moment when the nurse asks if Ike was a McCain or Obama supporter perfectly illustrated this idea.
Why does that matter? Because then I'll know if he partied too hard or if he tried to kill himself.
Randy's story was also very funny, with him so ecstatically excited about the prospect of this undefined change the country would see, leading him to make some of the most embarrassing, selfish, and short-sighted decisions he has ever made. Like when he tells off his boss.
You know what Obama said? Yes, we can! Hey, I voted for Obama! Obama's not talking about you!
And I think what works best about this story is that in the end, both extremes find themselves getting a little dose of their opposing viewpoint. The Stotch's doomsday panic ends with them feeling a little bit optimistic.
It's just maybe Obama would be all right.
While Randy's unfettered optimism ends with him getting a dose of pretty bad karma.
Where are my pants and where's my TV?
Dad, your boss called. He said you're fired.
The entire Ike subplot was really funny too, mostly because Ike is generally just one of the funniest characters in the show, especially in his depression over the McCain loss.
Goodbye. No!
But the big reveal that he was a part of the heist team all along tied the stories together in a fun way.
Boom, baby.
But even the smaller aspects of the episode played really well and felt like they had something to say. Cartman was only in the episode for one single joke, but it's a perfectly in-character moment where he's clearly taking advantage of the chaos of the election.
Hey, you guys want to buy a TV?
Overall, it's a pretty funny episode that, despite being explicitly political in its framing device, is actually mostly just commentary about people. Plus, a great heist parody. And as this cultural artifact, an election episode released the day after an election, it's wildly impressive. The way they had to go about making this thing is fascinating, particularly with those time constraints. Here's Stone again on part of that process. So we didn't really start in earnest on this show until 1 week ago. For the speeches, we had a blank space in there there, with the acceptance and concession speeches in there. That only takes us a couple hours to do. It's very easy animation. The main thing was waiting until they gave the speeches so we could get the backdrops and see what it looked like. Then we copied down the speech and put it in there. The season 12 Blu-ray actually has a working cut of this episode from the day of the election, and you can see some of the temporary scenes and differences to the final cut. The opening sequence has entirely different staging. Michelle and the Obama girls, as well as the Bidens, are actually on stage with Barack. This is still the only time South Park has ever depicted Biden on the show. But after Obama's actual acceptance speech, they changed this location to match the actual location that he gave the speech. And they even inserted moments pulled directly from that speech, which obviously makes the whole next day magic trick feel even crazier.
There's something about the fact that they
get a new puppy because we're going to the
kids get a puppy because we're going to the White House. And I'm like, people are going to remember that.
And you have earned the new puppy that's coming with us to the White House. We will name him Sparkles.
But I also think that About Last Night was one of the most important in the history of South Park in terms of how that show is perceived and what expectations are put on it. Obviously, the show has always contained modern social commentary and satirized current events, but the immediacy of the election episode sort of changed everybody's expectations. Suddenly, it wasn't insane to think that South Park might be talking about the biggest news story of the week days after it happened. Prior to this revelation, the only show that was really capable of this was Saturday Night Live, but obviously putting together a fictional narrative is different than doing live sketches. And I think, for better or worse, this started making people think more about South Park when crazy current events went down. Oh, I can't wait to hear what South Park has to say about this type of attitude. And this created expectations for South Park to cover the news stories that were making the biggest splashes or felt like they demanded satirization, which is actually counter to the very thing that made this episode so iconic. The fact that they managed to predict the election and fit so many direct recreations and references to the events 24 hours later was one of the least expected things in South Park's history. It made a huge impact because it was such a difficult thing to do that nobody expected it could ever be done. And so, after this episode, especially around election time, suddenly Matt and Trey are expected to cover the election in real time. And Matt and Trey absolutely work best when they are defying expectation and telling the stories they want to tell. This is why season 20 was such a mess. They were simultaneously trying to tell this bigger story about an internet troll and his impact on the people of South Park, while also tying it to an unpredictable real-world election cycle. And because they were expected to react to the election itself in real time, it completely upended their actual plans for the story they wanted to tell. These are actually ideas I'm going to explore even more thoroughly in 2 upcoming South Park videos, one about their history of satirizing presidents, and one looking back on season 20 to decide, was it really that bad? So stay tuned. But all this to say, this is one of the reasons it doesn't surprise me that they don't want to cover the election this year. Matt and Trey have never done their best work when working under people's expectations for what they need to do or being told what they have to do. They have always worked best in defying expectations and telling the stories they want to tell. And when those expectations get in the way, the quality suffers, and that is really all there is to it.
I stay mellow watching Johnny Two Cellos. He talks cartoons, he's a really cool fellow. He keeps you posted on adult cartoons. If that's what you're into, then grab a spoon and a very big bowl of your favorite cereal. Feels like Saturday morning cartoon material. Johnny Two Cellos, watch him on YouTube. Now enjoy this groove and bust a move.